There's a truth about masculinity that too many men have forgotten. It is this: a man who knows his worth does not chase, he does not run after what slips away, he does not beg for attention, he does not compete for scrap. Instead, he understands something deeper, something stronger. When his presence is not valued, he disappears. And that disappearance is not weakness, it is power. Chasing is weakness, disappearing is strength. That truth alone can transform the way a man carries himself. Too many men confuse chasing with effort, with persistence, with love. They've been told since they were young that if you want something, you have to go after it relentlessly. And in some areas of life, career, discipline, achievement, that is true. But when it comes to people, when it comes to relationships, that same approach backfires. Why? Because chasing says something deeper about where a man places his value. Chasing is not about strength. Chasing is about desperation. It reveals that the man has put someone else on a throne above him, someone who now becomes the judge of his worth. And the moment you hand over your worth to another person, you lose. Think about what chasing actually looks like. The constant text, the calls, the late night scrolling through her social media, the attempts to prove you're still there, still waiting, still available. It looks like you're fighting, but what it really shows is that you're begging for attention, begging for validation, begging for someone else to notice what you don't even notice in yourself, your own value. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine silent. Imagine a man who does not chase, who does not beg, who does not prove. Instead, he withdraws, he disappears. That silence speaks louder than any words. It says, I am not going to spend my life running after someone who does not see me. It says, I know who I am, and if you don't, then I won't force you to. That is strength. That is power. Because here is the paradox. The man who chases loses dignity, while the man who disappears gains respect. People feel the weight of his absence. They notice when he's gone. They sense the difference between a man who is desperate to stay and a man who is secure enough to walk away. And disappearing does not mean hatred. It does not mean bitterness. It does not mean punishing anyone. It is not a game. It is a boundary. It is the ultimate expression of self-respect. A man disappears not because he is weak, but because he refuses to remain where he is not valued. He protects his energy, his time, and his sense of self. This is why disappearing is strength. It forces both sides into clarity. For the man, it's a reminder that his life is bigger than chasing after validation. For the other person, it creates a contrast. They can now see what his presence really meant, because they can feel what his absence leaves behind. Chasing destroys polarity. It flips the natural balance. The one who chases communicates that they are lower, that they are reaching upward, trying to catch what is running away. But when a man disappears, the dynamic shifts. He is no longer in pursuit. He is centered, grounded, anchored, and others have to decide whether they will meet him where he stands. Strength is never proven in the noise of pursuit. It is revealed in the stillness of restraint. It takes more courage to walk away than it does to keep running after someone who doesn't want to be caught. Anyone can chase. It requires nothing but fear. But to disappear, to step back in silence, requires control, dignity, and a deep recognition of one's own worth. When a man truly understands this, his behavior changes. He no longer burns himself out trying to convince anyone of his value. He no longer fights battles that should never be fought. He no longer lowers himself just to be chosen. Instead, he carries himself with the quiet strength of someone who knows, if my presence is not enough, my absence will speak for me. This is not arrogance. It is not coldness. It is alignment with reality. A man who disappears is a man who has realized that chasing someone who does not want to be caught is a waste of his life, and life is too short to waste. So remember this: chasing may feel like strength, but it is weakness in disguise. It is a man surrendering his dignity for the illusion of connection. Disappearing, on the other hand, may look like walking away, but it is standing taller than ever. It is protecting your worth. It is holding the line of your masculinity. Chasing says, I'll do anything to keep you. Disappearing says, I will never do anything that costs me my self-respect. One is weakness. The other is strength. Masculinity is anchored in purpose. Without purpose, a man drifts. He becomes reactive, restless, and dependent on the approval of others. But with purpose, a man becomes immovable. He stands firm like a tree, rooted deep into the earth. Storms can come, winds can blow, and yet he does not fall, because his life is not defined by external circumstances. It is grounded in something deeper. Too many men today live unanchored lives. They spend their days chasing distractions, chasing attention, chasing approval, chasing temporary pleasures. And what happens when the chase stops? Emptiness. They are left with nothing because they were never standing on solid ground in the first place. Purpose changes. This purpose gives direction, clarity, and weight to a man's existence. It is not simply about career or financial success. It is about something larger, the mission a man has chosen for himself, the life he is building, the values he refuses to compromise. Purpose is the compass that guides him when everything else feels uncertain. Think about a ship at sea. Without an anchor, the ship drifts wherever the tide takes it. Waves push it in one direction, then another. The ship has no control. But when the anchor is lowered, the ship holds its position. The waters may move, but the ship stands firm. That is what purpose does for a man. It keeps him from drifting into weakness. It keeps him from being tossed around by every fleeting emotion, every rejection, every test. A man anchored in purpose does not chase after what slips away because his energy is already spoken for. He is too busy building, too focused on creating, too invested in his mission. He understands that women, friendships, opportunities, they are important, but they are not the foundation. They are additions, not anchors. His anchor is within himself. This is why masculine strength feels different. It is not frantic. It is not needy. It is steady. A man who is truly anchored does not need to prove himself through words or gestures. His life speaks for him. His discipline, his vision, his work, these are the markers of who he is. And because of that, his presence carries weight. Notice how people react to a man with purpose. They are drawn to him, not because he is chasing them, but because he is moving forward with clarity. There is a gravity in his direction. He does not beg for attention, yet he receives it. He does not demand respect, yet he earns it. He does not plead for love, yet it comes to him. Now contrast this with the man without purpose. He wakes up without direction. He fills his days with distractions, with noise, with temporary escapes. He places his value entirely in the hands of others. If a woman approves of him, he feels worthy. If she rejects him, he collapses. He becomes a leaf in the wind, easily moved, easily broken, easily forgotten. That is not masculinity. That is dependence disguised as effort. Your masculinity requires something higher. It requires building a life where self-respect does not depend on another person's response. And that is only possible when a man finds and commits to his purpose. Purpose does not mean perfection. It does not mean you have every answer. It does not mean life becomes easy. But it does mean that even when life is difficult, even when people disappoint you, even when circumstances shift, you still know where you are going. You are anchored. You may stumble, but you will not drift. And here is the secret. Women respect this more than anything else. They respect a man who cannot be easily shaken. They respect a man whose life has weight, who does not fall apart when faced with rejection, who does not abandon his mission just to please them. Purpose makes a man magnetic, not because he is trying to attract, but because he is standing firm. When you are anchored in purpose, you stop chasing. You no longer beg to be chosen because you have already chosen yourself. You no longer waste your time proving your worth because your life already proves it. You no longer fear losing people because you know the one thing you cannot lose is your own mission. Masculinity is not about how loud you can shout, how many people you can impress, or how many conquests you can achieve. Masculinity is about how deep your roots go. When life tests you, do you fall or do you hold the line? When others walk away, do you collapse or do you stand taller? When faced with rejection, do you chase or do you disappear and return to your purpose? This is the difference between the man who drifts and the man who leads. One is tossed around by life, waiting for someone to tell him who he is. The other already knows, because his purpose defines him. Masculinity anchored in purpose is unshakable. It does not chase. It does not beg. It builds. It creates. It protects. It endures. And that is why a man's greatest strength will never come from running after others. It will always come from being anchored in something bigger than himself. Presence carries more weight than pursuit. That is the mark of true masculinity. A man who endlessly pursues shows eagerness, but eagerness is not the same as value. A man who knows his worth understands that his presence alone should speak for him. If his presence does not inspire respect, no amount of pursuit ever will. Think about this carefully. When a man chases, he sends a message without realizing it. You are above me. You are the prize. I must run to keep up. That message strips him of authority before he even begins. His pursuit becomes proof of his need, and need is never attractive. Now imagine a man who does not chase. He is calm. He is still. He does not rush forward, nor does he scramble for recognition. He carries himself with quiet confidence because he knows his worth is not up for debate. That man's presence has gravity. He does not have to run toward others. They naturally feel drawn toward him. Presence is heavy. It is not about loud words or grand gestures. It is about the subtle but undeniable way a man holds himself, the way he speaks, the way he listens, the way he looks at the world. When a man is grounded, he doesn't need to chase because those around him already feel the weight of his being. Pursuit, on the other hand, is light. It is scattered. It looks desperate because it is desperate. Pursuit tries to force recognition. Presence commands it. And this is why presence always outweighs pursuit. Consider the difference between noise and silence. Noise grabs attention for a moment, but silence lingers. Silence leaves people thinking, questioning, wondering. A man who endlessly pursues is noisy, always calling, always texting, always proving. But a man who steps back, who disappears instead of chasing, is silent. And in that silence, people begin to feel his absence. They start to notice what he brought simply by being there. This is why presence carries more weight, because absence magnifies it. You cannot miss the noise of someone who chased you, but you will feel the emptiness left by someone whose presence was steady and strong. Masculinity is not about being everywhere, shouting the loudest, fighting to be noticed. It is about standing so firm in who you are that your presence alone creates impact. And the man who understands this never wastes his energy chasing. He lets his presence do the speaking. Presence communicates self-respect. It says, I am enough as I am. I do not need to run after you to prove my worth. It says, if ye value me, you will meet me where I stand. If not, I will not lower myself by chasing. That kind of energy cannot be ignored. The truth is, women respect presence more than pursuit. Pursuit flatters them for a moment, but it does not last. Presence, however, lingers in their mind. The calm, steady, masculine man who knows how to walk away leaves a far deeper impression than the one who never stops running after them. Presence is also about discipline. It comes from living with purpose, from building a life that speaks louder than any words could. A man anchored in his mission does not have time to beg for attention. His presence already demonstrates his value through his achievements, his composure, his focus. That kind of presence inspires trust. It makes others want to be near him, not because he is chasing them, but because they can feel his stability. Think about leaders. Throughout history, the greatest leaders were not those who begged people to follow them. They were those whose presence alone inspired loyalty. They walked into a room and people paid attention. They did not chase approval. Their presence carried weight. You must understand this. When you chase, you diminish yourself. When you hold your ground, you magnify yourself. The man who pursues endlessly is forgettable. The man whose presence speaks for itself is unforgettable. So the choice is simple. Do you want to spend your life running after others, or do you want to cultivate a presence so strong that people cannot help but feel it, even in your absence? This is the paradox of masculinity. The less you chase, the more you are remembered. The quieter you stand, the louder your presence becomes. Pursuit fades quickly, but presence endures. If your presence is not enough to keep someone, chasing them will not change that. But if your presence has weight, you will never need to chase it all. People will feel the difference. They will recognize the value without you saying a word. That is the essence of strength. Not noise, not desperation, but presence.